Did anything happen last night, Daniel? Those words sliced the quiet morning. His boss, Vivian Clark, stood in borrowed clothes, eyes trembling. Daniel felt the past stir. One kind choice. A night that could cost everything, and change their lives forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. Let's begin. Daniel Cole lived by lists because lists didn't die. Wake Zoe. Pack lunch. Tie hair. Kiss forehead. Smile like everything's fine. Then the train into downtown Chicago, the glass tower, the spreadsheets that always balanced, unlike his heart. It had been 2 years since Hannah's funeral, yet Daniel still caught himself turning in bed toward an empty side. Zoe, 7, carried the loss differently. She didn't cry much anymore. She just watched him the way kids watch adults when they're deciding whether the world is safe. Friday evening brought the company celebration, a rare, mandatory fun night for the finance division. Daniel promised Zoe he'd only stay 1 hour. Her dance recital started at 7. He arrived at the rooftop lounge with his tie loosened and grief tucked into his ribs. Laughter bounced off expensive walls. Vivian Clark, finance director, stood near the bar like she'd been carved out of ice and ambition, until Daniel noticed the tremor in her hand. Vivian didn't drink much. Everyone knew that. Yet there were empty glasses beside her now, and her eyes, usually razor-sharp, looked far away. "Cole," she said, voice too bright. "You actually came." "Just for a minute," Daniel replied. "My daughter." "I know." Vivian's smile faltered. "Zoe. Ballet. You never stop talking about her. Lucky kid." Daniel heard it then, underneath the practiced tone, something breaking. A colleague drifted by and congratulated Vivian on finally being free. Vivian's jaw tightened. When the colleague moved on, Vivian leaned closer, words slurring at the edges. "Richard signed the divorce papers yesterday," she said. 12 years and he left me for a headline." Daniel blinked. "Vivian, are you okay?" "I'm fine," she lied, then laughed once, sharp and wounded. "I'm perfect." "That's the problem." She tried to stand straighter. Her heel slipped. Daniel caught her elbow before she hit the bar stool. For a second she clung to him like she didn't trust the floor. "Let me call you a car," Daniel said. "No." Vivian's voice rose, drawing glances. She lowered it again, panic flashing. "Not a car service. Not with my name. Not like this. People will talk." Daniel checked his watch. 6:32, Zoe would be backstage soon, searching the crowd for him. Daniel's throat tightened as the old familiar choice returned, the one grief forced on him constantly: do the right thing, and pay for it later. Vivian swayed again, and the decision made itself. "Come on," Daniel murmured. "I'm taking you home." In the parking garage, Vivian's composure crumbled completely. She stared at the concrete wall as Daniel guided her into his car. "I'm sorry," she whispered, as if the words tasted like shame. "You shouldn't see me like this." Daniel started the engine. Everyone gets one night they can't carry it alone. Vivian gave an address in Gold Coast, an upscale townhouse lined with security cameras and winter planters. When Daniel parked, she patted her coat, her purse, the pockets like she was searching for air. "My keys," she said, voice rising. "They were in my hand." They weren't in the car. Not in her purse. Not anywhere." Vivian's eyes filled. "I can't go back. Not to the party. Not with people watching." Daniel looked at his phone, 6:54. A text from Mrs. Irene Carter, their elderly neighbor, popped up like a lifeline: "I'll get Zoe to the auditorium. Don't panic. Breathe." Daniel exhaled, shaky. He turned to Vivian. You can stay at my place tonight, he said. Just to sleep. Then we'll figure out the keys in the morning. Vivian stared at him like he'd offered something more dangerous than a couch. Daniel, she whispered. Are you sure? He thought of Hannah's voice, soft in his memory, be the kind of man Zoe can copy. Yes, he said. I'm sure. And as Daniel pulled away from the curb, he didn't notice the black SUV that rolled out from across the street a moment later, keeping a careful, quiet distance. Daniel's house wasn't fancy. It smelled faintly like laundry detergent and Zoe's strawberry shampoo. Vivian stepped inside like she didn't belong anywhere that warm. He offered water, aspirin, a blanket. Nothing else. Vivian sank onto the couch, blinking at family photos on the wall, Zoe missing teeth, Hannah laughing in sunlight. Her throat worked like she wanted to swallow the whole scene down. I didn't mean to ruin your night, she said. You didn't, Daniel answered, though his chest ached. Stay here. I have to go. He left a note on the coffee table in careful block letters, you're safe. Nothing happened. Rest. Daniel. Then he hurried Zoe's recital costume bag into the car and drove fast, but not reckless, because Hannah died on a reckless night. At the elementary auditorium, the lights were too bright and the seats too full. Daniel slid into a back row beside Mrs. Irene Carter, who patted his hand like she'd been saving the spot with her heart. Zoe saw him and lit up so hard it hurt. She danced like she was trying to prove something, like if she was perfect enough, life wouldn't take anyone else. Afterward, Zoe ran into his arms in a pink tutu. You came. Daniel held her tight. Always. Then her smile wavered. You missed my solo. The words landed like a knife wrapped in glitter. I know, Daniel said softly. I'm so sorry, Zoe. Mrs. Carter recorded it. We'll watch it together, okay? Zoe studied him with that old, too wise look. Did you help someone again? Daniel swallowed. Yes. Zoe nodded slowly, accepting it like a fact of who her dad was, not a mistake. Back home, Daniel checked the living room. Vivian was still asleep, curled under the blanket like a person trying to disappear. He guided Zoe upstairs, helped her brush her teeth, read 2 pages of a book Hannah used to read, then paused because his voice caught on the third. When Zoe finally slept, Daniel prepared the guest room. He set out clean towels, an extra toothbrush, and one of Hannah's old sweaters, soft, oversized, safe. Vivian woke near midnight, confused and pale. Daniel kept a respectful distance as he walked her upstairs. Thank you, she murmured, clutching the sweater to her chest like it was armor. You're welcome, he said simply. Good night. For a few seconds, Vivian's eyes stayed on him, heavy with something unspoken. Then the door closed. Daniel collapsed into bed, exhausted. Sometime after 2 a.m., he woke to the faint sound of a curtain moving. Downstairs, Vivian stood by the front window, staring out into the dark like she expected something to appear. Daniel didn't announce himself. He just watched her shoulders tighten when headlights passed. Whatever shattered Vivian at that party wasn't only a divorce. And Daniel, man who lived by numbers, felt something else now, the quiet certainty that this night would cost him. Morning arrived with cartoons and cereal. Zoe sat at the kitchen table in socks that didn't match, humming along to a theme song. Daniel poured coffee, rehearsing explanations in his head, simple ones, safe ones. Vivian appeared in the doorway wearing Hannah's sweater and pajama bottoms Daniel had bought on a desperate grocery run years ago. Her hair was pulled back, face bare, eyes rimmed with shame. Zoe looked up. Blinked. Hi. Vivian's mouth trembled into something almost like a smile. Hi, Zoe. I'm Vivian. I work with your dad. Zoe nodded as if strangers in the kitchen were normal. Then she asked, blunt as only 7-year-olds could be, are you sad? Vivian's breath hitched. Yes, she admitted. Zoe considered that, then slid her coloring book across the table. Coloring helps. Pick the purple one. Purple is brave. Vivian stared at the crayons like they were a miracle she didn't deserve. Daniel cleared his throat. Vivian, can we talk a second? He led her into the small home office and shut the door. Vivian folded her arms, then unfolded them, then gripped the edge of the desk like she needed something solid. Her voice came out raw. She swallowed. Did anything happen last night? Daniel didn't flinch. He'd expected it. No, he said firmly. You slept. You were safe. I slept in my room. That's it. Vivian's shoulders sagged with relief so intense it looked like pain. Then her eyes sharpened again, terrified by a different thought. You could have used it, she whispered. People do. They get close, then they take something. Daniel's jaw tightened, not at her, but at the life that had taught her that lesson. I'm not that person, he said. Vivian nodded slowly, as if she wanted to believe him but didn't trust the world to allow men like him to exist. Thank you, she murmured. For not making it worse. She stepped past him, then paused, eyes sliding toward the family photo on the shelf. Hannah, laughing. She was beautiful, Vivian said quietly. Daniel's chest tightened. She was. Vivian's gaze dropped to a framed newspaper clipping beside the photo, a small article Daniel kept hidden in plain sight. Local accountant killed in hit and run, case unsolved. Vivian's fingers hovered, not touching. Hannah, that was her. Daniel's blood went cold. He hadn't meant for anyone at work to know the details. She was coming home from the hospital fundraiser, he said, voice low. A car ran a light. Drove off. Vivian's face changed, subtle, but Daniel saw it. Recognition. Or fear. Before Daniel could ask why, Vivian's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, and the color drained from her face. Richard, she whispered. Daniel frowned. Your ex. Vivian shook her head once, like she was trying to shake off a thought. He doesn't know where I was last night. Daniel's stomach sank as he remembered the black SUV in his neighborhood, headlights passing too slow. Vivian looked up at him, voice trembling. Daniel, if he finds out I was here, he'll destroy you. And from the living room, Zoe's small voice called out, cheerful and unaware, Dad. The purple crayon broke. Daniel fixed the purple crayon with tape while Vivian stood by the counter pretending to breathe normally. Zoe chattered about dance class and how Mrs. Carter's cat was, probably secretly in charge of the whole street. Vivian smiled at the right times, but her eyes kept flicking to the windows. When Zoe finally ran upstairs to change, Vivian's mask dropped. Richard Grayson isn't just my ex, she said. He's on the board. He's connected. Daniel felt the name hit a memory he didn't want, late-night work, a spreadsheet that didn't line up, an internal audit request that vanished before it became official. I've heard of him, Daniel admitted carefully. Vivian nodded, voice tight. He thinks the company belongs to him. He tried to push me out months ago. The divorce was supposed to be clean. Her laugh was bitter. Nothing with him is clean. She pulled a folded paper from her purse, creased, handled too many times. Not keys. A flash drive. I found this in his office, Vivian said. Hidden in a folder labeled Legacy. Like he's writing history. Daniel stared. What is it? Proof, Vivian whispered. Shell vendors. Fake consulting fees. Money moved through charities that look good on paper. Daniel's pulse thundered. That's fraud. It's worse, Vivian said, and her eyes glistened. One of the charities is the same foundation that sponsored the hospital fundraiser Hannah attended the night she died. Daniel went still. The room felt suddenly too small, like the walls were leaning in. "You're saying..." His voice cracked. "You think her accident wasn't an accident?" Vivian didn't answer immediately. She just held Daniel's gaze like she was begging him not to break. "I don't know," she said softly. "But I know Richard doesn't leave loose ends." Daniel's hands curled into fists. All the nights he'd blamed himself, if he'd picked Hannah up, if he'd insisted on a rideshare, if he'd been less tired, less busy, suddenly shifted into something darker. A knock hit the front door. 3 sharp raps. Vivian flinched hard. Daniel's instincts snapped awake. He moved to the peephole. A man stood outside in a suit that screamed money, pretending to be polite. Daniel didn't recognize him. But the black SUV was idling across the street. The suited man raised a hand and smiled like he already owned the house. "Mr. Cole," he called through the door, voice smooth. "Vivian's been worried. We're here to take her home." Vivian's whisper came out like ice. "That's Richard's security." Daniel didn't open the door. He turned the deadbolt once. Twice. Then he looked at Vivian, not his boss, not the brilliant finance director, just a woman cornered by the kind of power that didn't accept no. "You're not going anywhere," Daniel said quietly. "Not with them." Vivian's eyes filled. "Daniel, you don't understand what you're stepping into." Daniel thought of Zoe upstairs, humming to herself, living in a world where purple crayons mattered more than monsters. "I understand enough," he said. Outside, the suited man's smile thinned. The knock came again, harder this time. And Daniel realized morality wasn't a speech. It was a door you refused to open. Daniel called Mrs. Irene Carter first. Not the police. Not yet. Because Vivian had said one sentence that wouldn't leave his head: "Richard has friends everywhere." Mrs. Carter answered on the first ring. Daniel kept his voice calm. "Irene, I need a favor. Can Zoe come to you, now?" 2 minutes later, Vivian went upstairs, steadying Zoe with a smile that didn't scare her. "Hey, Zoe. Want to show Mrs. Carter your dance ribbon?" Zoe beamed. "Yes." When the door closed behind Zoe and Mrs. Carter, Daniel felt the air return to his lungs. He faced Vivian. "We do this the right way." Vivian nodded, tears sliding down without permission. "The right way might ruin us." "Then we get ruined telling the truth," Daniel said. "Not hiding it." He didn't open the door to the suited man. Instead, Daniel stepped into the kitchen, pulled out his laptop, and logged into the company's secure reporting portal, one he'd never used because he'd always believed rules protected people. Now he understood rules only mattered when someone brave enough used them. Together, Daniel and Vivian documented everything: the flash drive contents, the shell vendors, the suspicious charity ties. Vivian wrote a statement with her hands shaking but her words clean. Daniel attached the old Hit and Run article, the fundraiser connection, and one crucial detail he'd ignored for 2 years: Hannah had once told him she overheard an argument at that fundraiser. A man shouting, "Loose ends get people killed." Hours later, Vivian made the call that terrified her most: federal investigators, not local. The suited man outside finally left, because intimidation only works when silence is guaranteed. And silence was gone. Over the next weeks, Richard Grayson fought back the way predators do: leaks to the press, whispers at work, accusations that Vivian was unstable and Daniel was a grieving opportunist. Daniel kept showing up anyway. With Zoe's lunch packed. With Vivian's coffee on her desk. With his spine straight. At the hearing, Vivian didn't cry. She didn't perform. She simply told the truth. Daniel testified too, voice steady even when Hannah's name filled the room like a ghost finally allowed to speak. The investigation didn't resurrect the dead. But it did something else: it stopped Richard from making more. When it was over, Vivian stood outside the courthouse in a plain coat, the city wind tugging her hair loose. Daniel approached with Zoe between them, holding a paper flower she'd made. Zoe looked up at Vivian. "Are you still sad?" Vivian crouched down. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But your dad helped me be brave." Zoe nodded solemnly and offered the paper flower. "Purple is brave." Vivian took it like it was priceless. Later, months later, when the scandal faded and the quiet normal life returned, Vivian showed up at Zoe's recital early. She sat in the front row. Daniel sat beside her. No secrets. No shame. After the show, Zoe grabbed both their hands like she'd already decided what family could mean. Vivian turned to Daniel, eyes soft. "That night I asked if anything happened. I wasn't scared of you." "I know," Daniel said. "I was scared," Vivian whispered, "that something good might finally happen, and I'd ruin it." Daniel reached for her hand, honest and gentle. "Then we don't ruin it. We build it." A year later, the wedding wasn't lavish. It was warm. Mrs. Carter cried loudest. Zoe scattered petals as the flower girl like she was blessing the whole world. And Daniel Cole, man of lists and tired mornings, finally learned the truest math of all. Quiet kindness doesn't just heal wounds. Sometimes it exposes what hurt you, and gives you a life strong enough to survive the truth. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe for more stories that stay with you.